You walk into a house and it feels right. The kitchen looks fresh, the floors are clean, the paint is new, and the listing price is just under what you were expecting to pay. So you start doing the math in your head, already mentally placing your furniture, already thinking about the backyard, and then you make an offer, and then you close. And then, about 60 days later, the water heater dies. You find out the roof has 2 layers of old shingles underneath that brand new top coat. The HVAC system is running, but not actually cooling. And your dream home just turned into the most expensive lesson of your life. Hit subscribe before we begin, because if you are currently house hunting or even thinking about it, what I'm about to walk you through could save you tens of thousands of dollars before you ever sign a single piece of paper. I'm Jerry Davis, and I've been in renovation, construction, and home assessment long enough to have watched good people make devastating financial decisions on houses that looked perfectly fine from the outside. And I'm not talking about obviously neglected properties. I'm talking about houses that were staged beautifully, priced competitively, and listed with glowing descriptions. The ones that fool people. The ones where the seller did just enough to make it look move-in ready without actually fixing what was wrong underneath. By the time we're done here, you're going to know exactly what to look for before you put your money on the table. Not after the inspection, not after closing. Before you even get emotionally attached. Let's start with the roof, because this is where I see buyers get absolutely wrecked. When you pull up to a house and the roof looks new, your brain says, great, one less thing to worry about. But here's what no one tells you. In a lot of states, you are legally allowed to install a second layer of asphalt shingles directly on top of the original layer. That means the sellers could have spent maybe $3,000 or $4,000 putting new shingles on top of a rotting, compromised deck underneath, and it looks perfectly fine from the street. When you eventually have to replace that roof for real, you're now paying to tear off 2 full layers, haul double the material, and potentially deal with damaged sheathing that was hidden underneath both of them. That job goes from $8,000 or $9,000 to $15,000 or $16,000, pretty fast, depending on the size of the house. So when you're walking the property, ask directly whether the roof is a full tear-off replacement or a layover. If they can't answer that, your inspector needs to check. Look at the roof line from the side of the house. If it has a wavy, uneven appearance, that's often the old layer telegraphing through. A straight, clean roof line is a better sign. And check the soffits and fascia while you're at it. Rotting wood at the edges of the roofline is a red flag that water has been getting in somewhere it shouldn't for a while. Now, let's talk about fresh paint, because this one drives me absolutely nuts. Fresh paint inside a house is not always a good sign. I know that sounds backwards, but think about it from the seller's perspective. If everything was genuinely in great shape, why are entire rooms freshly painted right before listing? Sometimes it's just cosmetic preparation, which is totally fine. But sometimes, and more often than buyers realize, fresh paint is covering water stains on ceilings, mold starting to develop in corners, smoke damage, or wall damage from leaks that were patched but not properly repaired. Here's a pro tip. When you're walking through, get close to the walls and ceiling. Look for slight texture differences, bubbling, or areas where the paint looks slightly thicker or shinier than the surrounding surface. Run your hand along the baseboard trim near bathrooms and kitchens. Feel for soft spots or slight separations from the wall. If a baseboard is pulling away or feels spongy, there's a moisture problem behind it. Fresh paint on top does not fix what's underneath. This is where people mess up on older homes especially. They see a fresh coat of neutral gray paint, nice lighting, some staged furniture, and they stop looking critically. And then, 6 weeks after closing, the ceiling in the master bedroom develops a brown ring right through that fresh white paint because the roof leak was never fixed. It was just painted over. I have seen this exact scenario more times than I can count. Look up. Always look up. Now let's get into the basement and crawl space, because most buyers walk through a house and spend maybe 45 seconds in the basement before heading back upstairs. That is a mistake. The basement and crawl space are where a house tells you its real story. Start with the smell. I'm serious. Before you even look at anything, stand at the bottom of the stairs and just smell. A musty, earthy, heavy odor is almost always moisture. Not always active flooding, but moisture intrusion over time, which means potential mold, wood rot, compromised framing, and a drainage problem that's going to need real money to fix. Look at the foundation walls closely. Stair-step cracks in brick or block foundations are a normal settling pattern and not always a deal breaker. But horizontal cracks in a poured concrete foundation wall are serious. That means the wall is experiencing lateral pressure and could be bowing inward over time. That repair involves either carbon fiber strapping or steel I-beams anchored to the floor joints, and you're looking at anywhere from $8,000 to $20,000, depending on how far along it's gone. Check the floor joists while you're down there. If the wood looks dark, stained, or has a fuzzy texture on the surface, that's either old water damage or active mold. Both are problems, and look for evidence of previous repairs. Multiple layers of patching compound on the foundation wall, fresh waterproofing paint in specific spots rather than all over, or a brand new sump pump in a basement that otherwise looks old. A brand new sump pump can mean one of two things. Either the previous owners were responsible and kept up with maintenance, or the basement flooded recently and they threw in a new pump as a quick fix before listing. Ask how old the sump pump is and whether it's ever activated. If they don't know or get vague, that's information too. Let's talk about the electrical system, because this is the one that genuinely makes houses dangerous, not just expensive. Walk the house and pay attention to the outlet and switch situation in every room. If you're in a house built before 1990 and the outlets don't have 3 prongs in bathrooms and kitchens, that's a grounding issue. If you find only 2-prong outlets throughout most of the house, you're probably looking at a rewiring conversation. Now go find the electrical panel. If you open it and see a brand called Federal Pacific or Zinsco, stop right there. Those panels have a documented history of breakers failing to trip during overloads, which is a fire risk. They are not up to current code in most jurisdictions. Replacing a panel runs anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000, more if the wiring throughout the house is aluminum rather than copper. While you're at the panel, count the breakers and look for any that are doubled up or have 2 wires going into a single breaker. That's called double tapping, and it's a code violation. Also, look for breakers that are labeled in messy, confusing ways or not labeled at all. That tells you the electrical system has been worked on piecemeal by multiple people over the years, and there's no guarantee it was done correctly. Don't get me wrong, electrical issues are fixable, but a full rewire on a medium-sized older home can run $40,000 to $70,000 depending on your location, the size of the house, and how complicated the layout is. That is not a minor line item. Now let's move to the HVAC, because this is another area where sellers will do the bare minimum to make a system limp through an inspection. Here's the thing. An HVAC system that turns on is not the same as an HVAC system that works correctly. When you're touring a house, go find the air handler or furnace and look at the installation date. Most systems have a sticker or label with the manufacture date right on them. A furnace older than 18 to 20 years is living on borrowed time. A central air conditioning system older than 15 years is the same story. If the unit is original to a house built in 2001 and you're buying this house now, you are almost certainly inheriting a replacement cost of $8,000 to $15,000 in the relatively near future. That's not a reason to walk away automatically, but it absolutely needs to factor into your offer price. Also, check the ductwork if you can. Old ductwork in unconditioned spaces like attics or crawl spaces often develops gaps, disconnections, and air leaks that reduce the efficiency of even a brand new system by 30 to 40%. Your energy bills end up significantly higher than they should be, and the system runs constantly trying to compensate. Ask when the ducts were last inspected. If the answer is never, that's another conversation to have with your contractor before you close. Here's what I really want you to pay attention to in the kitchen and bathrooms, because these two rooms alone can tell you an enormous amount about how the house was maintained overall. Start under the sinks. Pull open those cabinet doors and look at the cabinet floor and the back wall around the drain pipe and supply lines. Do you see any dark staining, soft wood, warping, or white mineral deposits? Mineral deposits mean water has been dripping for long enough that it dried and left residue behind repeatedly. That tells you there's been a slow leak that was never properly repaired. Now look at the caulking around the tub and shower. Cracked, missing, or mold-blackened caulk is a maintenance issue on its own. But if the caulk has been pulling away from the wall for any length of time, water has been getting behind the tile. If there's tile on the wall around the shower, push gently on the tiles nearest the floor and near the corners. If any of them move or feel loose, the backer board behind them is compromised from moisture. That means a full tile and backer board replacement, which gets expensive fast, especially if the water got far enough to damage the subfloor underneath. This is where people mess up. They see a bathroom and think, well, it's dated, but it's functional. Then they find out that functional means water has been seeping into the floor structure for 2 or 3 years, and now there's a soft spot developing right in front of the tub. I've pulled tile off bathroom walls and found black mold going 12 inches deep into the wall cavity. That is not a caulk and paint situation. That's a full gut. All right, let's talk about grading and drainage outside, because I feel like this is the most overlooked item on any buyer's walkthrough, and it causes some of the most consistent, expensive damage over time. Grading refers to the slope of the ground immediately around the foundation of the house. The ground should slope away from the house in all directions so that rainwater runs outward rather than pooling against the foundation wall. Walk the perimeter of the house. If the ground is flat, or worse, slopes toward the foundation, that house is funneling every rainstorm directly into its own foundation. Over years, that's how you get basement water intrusion, foundation cracks, soil erosion under the footing, and eventually structural movement. Regrading a yard isn't catastrophically expensive on its own, but if the damage has been happening for years, you're not just paying to regrade the yard, you're paying for what that water already did. Also, look at the downspouts. Are they directing water away from the house? Are the extensions actually in place, or did someone remove them? Do the gutters appear to be overflowing based on staining down the siding? Clogged gutters that overflow dump water right at the base of the foundation wall. It's a simple maintenance issue to fix, but if it's been ignored, it's been doing damage. And check the window wells on basement windows. If they're full of debris, leaves, and standing water, that's another water intrusion point that might have already caused problems you can't see on a walkthrough. Now let's talk about one last sign that a house is about to drain your bank account. And this one is less about structural damage and more about what it means for your renovation budget. When you walk into a house and every cosmetic finish is brand new, but the layout is awkward, the rooms feel disconnected, the kitchen is galley style with no room to expand, the bathrooms are tiny with no logical way to reconfigure them, and every wall that you'd want to move is either a bearing wall or has ductwork and plumbing running through it, that house is going to be expensive to improve no matter what condition it's in. Sometimes the house itself is structurally sound, but architecturally limiting. And if you're buying it with plans to renovate and improve the value over time, you need to walk through with a contractor before you make an offer, not after. Because opening up a kitchen that's adjacent to a load-bearing wall, running new plumbing for a relocated bathroom, or reconfiguring a floor plan that doesn't make logical sense can easily add $50,000 to $100,000 to a project that you thought was going to cost $20,000. I see buyers fall in love with houses based on square footage and price per square foot, without ever thinking about whether the square footage is actually usable. A 1,400 square foot house that flows well, has a kitchen that connects to a dining area, has bathrooms that are appropriately sized for the bedroom count, and has storage built logically into the layout, will feel larger, live better, and be more valuable at resale than a 2,000 square foot house that feels chopped up, cramped in the wrong places, and costs you significantly more to make functional. Look, I get it. House hunting is emotional. You've been scrolling listings for months. You finally walk into something that feels right, and every instinct in your body wants to make it work. And sometimes it does work. But the houses that really do work are the ones where the bones are solid, the systems are honest, the maintenance was actually done, and the layout makes sense for how you're going to live. The ones that look great in photos and fall apart the moment you start living in them are the ones where the sellers knew exactly what they were hiding and knew how to hide it. So before you make any offer, please slow down and look at the roof up close, not just from the street. Smell the basement. Check the panel brand. Look under every sink. Walk the perimeter and watch how the ground slopes. And bring a contractor through before you fall completely in love. A good contractor can walk a house in an hour and tell you whether the problems you can see are isolated issues or symptoms of something much bigger. That conversation might cost you a few $100s. The information it gives you is worth far more than that. Tell me in the comments which one of these you almost missed, or which one of these is sitting in a house you're currently looking at. Because I guarantee at least 2 or 3 of these show up in almost every single deal that turns into a nightmare. I read every comment, and I want to know what you're dealing with. A good home purchase isn't about finding the perfect house. It's about understanding exactly what you're buying before the papers are signed and the keys are handed over, so that nothing surprises you after the money is already spent. That's the standard I hold myself to when I'm walking properties. And it's the standard I'd want you holding too. If this video helped you think differently about your next walkthrough, hit like, hit subscribe, and share it with someone who's currently house hunting and needs to see it. I'll catch you in the next one.